Hi, everyone, welcome to Film World Recap channel. Today we are going to explain about the super comedy movie called Gulliver Travels. One person gets caught in a huge whirlpool in the Bermuda Triangle and is washed up on an island with little people. On that island he has to face a series of strange events. We kindly remind you to subscribe to the channel while inviting you to continue watching the movie. Don't forget to like the video and turn on the bell icon. Let's go to the full story. This is Gulliver. Even though he is a middle-aged person, he is still like a child playing with toys. He works as a letter distributor in a newspaper company. Someone new comes to his place of work. It is Gulliver who gets to train him. He leaves to distribute the letters with the two. While the two are going, they meet a journalist named Darcy, a longtime friend of Gulliver's. Even though Gulliver has an idea about her, he is unable to say it. As Gulliver finishes his work and sings, Dan, the new employee, arrives. A letter is given to Gulliver saying that the new employee has been promoted. He also says that Gulliver talks less and will never get a promotion. Gulliver is deeply disturbed by this incident. He leaves thinking of going to another job. Meanwhile, Darcy is seen working. While he is wondering if he is going to meet Darcy or not, Darcy sees Gulliver and speaks. Gulliver is unable to say anything, so he takes a paper from the table. It does what he thought. Darcy asks Gulliver if he is interested in writing travel letters. He likes. Darcy says to write a travel letter about a place Gulliver visited tomorrow and bring it. They say they will take it if they have the ability. Gulliver comes home and commits an act of fraud, taking the details from the internet and making an article. The next day, it is given to Darcy. Darcy is amazed at Gulliver's abilities, but does not know that the details were taken from the internet. Gulliver is given a new job. The first job is not an easy one. You have to go to the Bermuda Triangle and write an article about the reason for the disappearance of the ships. Unaware of the dangers of this work, Gulliver likes it. Darcy prepares the necessary things for the journey. Gulliver leaves for Bermuda the next morning. Because the person who drives the boat does not want to go to the Bermuda Triangle, Gulliver is sent alone after telling him how to drive the boat and the route. Gulliver drinks beer and looks around, and falls asleep without knowing it. Gulliver wakes up to a storm that suddenly arrives. He tried to turn the boat away, but it was too late. He can't do anything, he is caught in a huge whirlpool. He loses consciousness. He feels unable to move his body when he regains consciousness. When Gulliver looks up, he sees little people on top of him. One small man says, "I am General Edward." Gulliver is tied with small ropes. Scared, Gulliver breaks the ropes and gets up. He thinks he is dreaming. Edward tells the soldiers to capture the beast, hooking to Gulliver's pants and pulling them down. The little men somehow knock Gulliver down. Gulliver loses consciousness again. When Gulliver regains consciousness, he is tied to a cart and taken away. Little people come running to see him. This is the kingdom of Lilliput. Gulliver is taken to the king of Lilliput. The princess feels sorry for Gulliver and asks if Gulliver should be locked up. Edward introduces Gulliver as a spy for the enemy state. Gulliver barely comes to his senses and asks where this is. The king's secretary says that the greatest kingdom in the world is Lilliput. Gulliver still can't imagine what will happen. After that, Gulliver is imprisoned in the kingdom's prison. In the prison, Gulliver is able to identify the imprisoned Horatio. Gulliver asks Horatio why he was imprisoned. Horatio says that the king tried to marry the princess and imprisoned him. Edward comes there after eavesdropping on their conversation. Gulliver gets angry and starts scolding Edward. Edward says at that time that they will be imprisoned for life. After that, Gulliver is mounted on a machine and taken to build a farm. Gulliver is tied tightly to the machine. At that time, the bell is rung to signal enemy invasion. An enemy invasion has come to the kingdom of Lilliput. The soldiers of the enemy kingdom go through the wall to the princess's balcony to kidnap the princess. They fire Chamber of King Lilliput. Edward tells the others not to save the princess and runs to where the princess is, because he wants to save the princess and win her heart. But Horatio understands that Edward cannot go to the princess's place at the right time. Because of that, Gulliver is asked to save the princess. Horatio rescues Gulliver from the machine. Gulliver rushes to the princess and rescues her by picking up the soldiers of the enemy kingdom and throwing them into the water. When Edward got there, it was all over. But the king and the king's secretary are trapped in the fire. Gulliver arrives at the scene. He tried to take the king out, but his hand was burnt. Gulliver thinks for a while and then urinates and puts out the fire. At that time, Horatio also closes the eyes of the princess. Gulliver is praised by everyone for saving the king. The king releases Horatio and Gulliver from prison because of this heroic deed. To celebrate that occasion, Gulliver and Horatio are invited to a night party. Edward is angry that Gulliver is praised as brave. At the festival, the king asks where Gulliver came from. Gulliver tells a lot of lies there. He says that he came from Manhunt and that he is its king. Everyone but Edward accepts it, and Gulliver feels a sense of heroism he never had. The king of Lilliput builds Gulliver a house with all the amenities by the sea. To do all his work, the servants are given. Gulliver asks King to find his lost boat. The king sends soldiers to search for the boat. A theater is built so that Gulliver can stay and the Titanic drama is performed there. Gulliver starts lying even then. It is said that something like the same thing happened to him in the Titanic drama. But Edward asks how he would live if he drowned. Gulliver says he came back to life. After that, Horatio asks Gulliver for a way to get the princess to befriend him. Gulliver says a good plan. When the princess is on the balcony, the Horatio go forward. Gulliver hides and sings a romantic song. Horatio pretends to sing the song and dances. But the plan succeeds. When the princess runs downstairs to see Horatio, she meets Edward on the way. Edward says that the two are destined to marry. The princess has no desire to marry Edward, but she can't escape Edward. Meanwhile, the soldiers find Gulliver's boat. Gulliver knows this. Gulliver comes to see the boat. His phone still works. When Gulliver picks up the phone, he sees that he has received many call messages from Darcy. Gulliver makes a call to Darcy. She knows that Gulliver's travelogue is fraudulent. Because of that, Darcy blames Gulliver. Gulliver ends the call and decides to stay in Lilliput without going to see Darcy again. Edward doesn't like Gulliver's decision. That's why he goes to the king of Lilliput and tells him about Gulliver's mistakes. But the king trusts Gulliver. Because of that, Edward's words are rejected and he is asked to leave. The king gives Gulliver the title of general and demotes Edward to the rank of vice-general. Angry at that, Edward disables the security system of the Lilliput state. The general of the enemy state sees this. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the generals of the enemy state come in boats to attack Lilliput. From ships approaching the kingdom of Lilliput, cannon fire is fired. As a general, it is Gulliver's responsibility to stop enemy attacks. Coming there, Gulliver goes down to the sea and goes to the ships of the enemy state and starts shaking the water. But suddenly Gulliver is attacked by artillery. But those small bullets cannot harm Gulliver, they hit Gulliver's body and start throwing everywhere. After that, Gulliver grabs the ships by the ropes and drags them away. Having won the battle, Gulliver comes to the king like a hero. Everyone is happy and only Edward is feigning happiness. King Lilliput and the townspeople treat Gulliver even more, creating a statue of Gulliver in the town, designing clothes to match his style, cutting Gulliver's hair, and giving him massages. One night, Edward sneaks into the princess's room. The princess gets very angry at that. But Edward says that he can come to her room anytime because he is going to marry the princess. The princess says she does not love Edward and will not marry him. Angry at that story, Edward goes to get help from the enemy state to destroy the Lilliput kingdom. The king of the enemy kingdom wants to destroy Lilliput. While Edward is thinking of a plan to defeat Gulliver, he finds a robot-making book left in Gulliver's boat. According to Gulliver's book, he takes help from the king of the enemy kingdom and builds a big robot. After a few days, the enemy invasion bell rings again. At that time, Gulliver is playing with the little people. Gulliver goes to where the invasion is taking place. Gulliver sees that there is a small robot, but after a while he sees something that he cannot imagine. The little robot becomes a bigger robot than Gulliver. The robot is controlled by Edward. He challenges Gulliver to a duel. Gulliver has no choice but to accept it. Gulliver tries to push the robot. But he can't even shake it. At that time, Edward pushes Gulliver and picks him up by his pants. Gulliver has to reveal all the lies he told earlier. The royal family is worried about Gulliver's lie. After that, they tie Gulliver to a boat and drag him to the place called the island where we don't go. Yoda people live on that island. Gulliver is captured by a giant girl. She thinks Gulliver is a toy. She keeps Gulliver inside her playhouse after dressing. In between, Darcy is washed up on the shores of Lilliput. Because Gulliver had told the group about Darcy, Edward recognizes Darcy. Edward Darcy is imprisoned in Lilliput. After Gulliver's defeat, Edward imprisoned the king and queen of Lilliput. Darcy meets the king and queen in the jail. Horatio is hiding and watching all of this. He realizes that Gulliver is the only person who can save the kingdom of Lilliput, so he goes to the island of the giants to find Gulliver. Horatio is a small person among the giants, so it is easy to find Gulliver without being caught by anyone. He tells Gulliver about what has happened in Lilliput. In the giant girl's room, Gulliver takes a parachute from a skeleton airman and returns to the island of the little people. Coming to Lilliput, Gulliver first goes to the prison and meets Darcy and apologizes to her for the fraud he committed and declares his love. Darcy forgives Gulliver. Gulliver promises the king that he will save the land of Lilliput again. The next day, Gulliver prepares to fight Edward's robot. Gulliver wants to return the kingdom to the king of Lilliput. But Edward says that if Gulliver loses, he will destroy the kingdom. But Gulliver is defeated at the beginning of the battle. Horatio, who is operating at that time, goes on a horse and enters the robot and breaks the machine system inside. Gulliver starts attacking the robot as the robot is paralyzed. After a while, the robot becomes completely inactive. The royal family and the people of the country are celebrating the victory. Because of this heroic act, Horatio is allowed to marry the princess. At that time, Edward arrives and takes the princess hostage. But the princess gives Edward away to fall. Gulliver gets Darcy's love. Again the kings of the two kingdoms prepare for battle. Gulliver stops the fight by teaching the value of peace. After that, everyone including the kings of the two kingdoms celebrate happiness together. Finally, Gulliver and Darcy leave Lilliput and return to New York. After a while, Gulliver becomes a skilled letter writer. Gulliver and Darcy walk away holding hands and the film ends. Subscribe the channel and comment your valuable opinion and like it. See you in the next movie.